the US Treasury, which issues bonds and raises capital on behalf of the US government for spending programs. Then there's the central bank, the Federal Reserve. And our central bank's job is to, number one, maintain liquidity in the capital markets so that businesses can invest in growing their products and growing their businesses and the economy grows, while not providing too much liquidity that you end up with inflationary effects. And inflationary effects means that there's too much money in the market and you see that money find its way into escalating prices on different, assets. And the Fed's long-term goal, remember, is to provide a stated goal of Jerome Powell in particular right now. This changes over time, but generally the intention of the Federal Reserve is to make liquidity, to make cash available to banks who ultimately make it available to businesses in such a way that there's enough cash in the system that the businesses grow and that people have capital to invest in growth while keeping inflation at 2%. So their long-term target is 2% inflation.
And it's also, correct me if I'm wrong, Friedberg.
And making sure that there's enough cash to support economic growth. So remember, last year, you'll remember Stan Druckenmiller was very public about how insane it was that the Federal Reserve was still buying bonds. And so there's one way to introduce cash into the system is to make cash available as a loan to banks. And then those, banks use that money to loan to businesses and it makes its way through the economy. Another way is for the Federal Reserve to step in and actually buy bonds, freeing up the money that other people would be otherwise using to buy bonds to go and invest in other things. So they're effectively forcing liquidity into the market by taking bonds out of the market. And last summer, or Q2 of last year, Druckenmiller was pounding the table saying, guys, the economic indicators on how quickly the markets are, on how quickly the economy is growing relative to how much inflation there is, indicates that we should stop buying bonds and we should stop injecting liquidity into the markets. This makes no sense. It is nonsensical. And there was no strong point of view from the Fed at the time, other than there was uncertainty about the bounce back from the recession from COVID. There was uncertainty about what else was happening in the economy and yada, yada. But the numbers, the economic indicators were showing very clearly the economy is growing at a robust pace, low unemployment, and inflation is starting to pick up. Holy crap, it's time to cool it off. And the Fed made a judgment call, and their judgment call really kind of was to keep going. And then we end up in this massive runaway inflationary problem where if you keep too much liquidity in the system for too long, you have inflation, even if you have economic growth. And now by pulling the money out of the system super, super fast, we reduce the inflationary effects potentially, but we tank the economy because now all this money coming out of the market means people are spending less and buying less and businesses have less to borrow. Right. The borrowing costs are high. And then that's the big vacuum.
Okay, hold on. Let me go to Chamath and then Sachs.
I just want to say one thing. The rate at which we pull the money out, which has had to be really, really fast over the last few weeks, can cause a recession. And that's the biggest concern right now is will that actually trigger a massive recession or not that everyone's watching?